warmly welcome you for another edition of In Conversation brought to you by Daily Mirror Online. And with this online edition, I thought of seeking amazing individuals, Sri Lankan individuals, representing, doing amazing things in their avenues of interest around the world. And today I have with me a beautiful lady. She's a young girl who's very creative and has great social media influence. Of course, she manages to discover, create this amazing enterprise to tell Sri Lanka's story. She's the founder of Sri Lankan Art and Cultural Museum based in New York, and it is the world's first Sri Lankan museum outside Sri Lanka. Julia Wijesinghe, thank you so much for joining with me.
Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Doing well. Hope you're keeping safe with the situation. Tucked in. Hope your family's doing well as well. So how is everything going? How are your days? Spending around?
It's definitely not the same. It's been tough. I mean, for the past year. I mean, we had the museum closed for the past year. I really want to thank my parents because, even during the COVID pandemic, they were thankful to keep it going, keep the museum going till this year, which now on May 29th, we're reopening 100%. So I'm really, really excited. But just usual, just college stuff and working at the restaurant has been my day.
Amazing. So there's this amazing community who wants to discover who Julia is. So, in a few words, if you can tell who you are, what your educational interests are, what your family is like, all that.
So I was born and raised in New York, and usually a lot of people think, being born in New York, you're just follow the New York culture. You don't really brought up really Sri Lankan. But when it comes to my family, my mom and my dad made sure that at home, I speak Singha, and then only when I'm in school and when I'm out with my friends, I speak in English. So my family's quite strict. So strictly in a good way. And I think I appreciate that because today I'm sitting here and being, talking to you, talking about my pride for Sri Lanka is because of them. Because if they didn't give me that, that influence in me, I don't think I'll be sitting here today or opened up the Sri Lankan Museum, honestly. Something else about me is that before I was known as a Sri Lankan Museum owner, I was actually a dancer. So I actually started dancing when I was 3.5 years old. I started with Sri Lankan dancing. Then I went to ballet, jazz, and tap. And then for the past 10 years, I've been doing Bharatanatyam. So that's a little bit about myself. Actually, ever since I started the museum, I couldn't do as much Bharatanatyam that I wish for, but I'm getting back to it. And I also started Sri Lankan dancing again. So I'm really, really excited for that. It's obviously online, but I still have fun with it. And what else? Oh, I'm also a college student. I'm a senior and I'm doing double major in accounting and cinematography. So, yeah.
That is amazing. And I love how you said that you did Bharatanatyam. So I also grew up doing Bharatanatyam. So I'm just going to give you like a additional right there for that. And out of curiosity, what was your connection with Sri Lanka like? How often do you visit? What are the things that you enjoy really like when you visit here?
So the first time I came to Sri Lanka was when I was 3. And the reason for coming was to visit my grandma. And that's like on my mom's side, her mom. And, that was the only, I usually come every single year. I haven't missed a year. Just this past year I missed because of COVID, or I would not miss a year. So usually I come during the summertime when I have summer school off. And honestly, in the beginning, I just really I really enjoy being around with my grandma. So that was the first connection I had with Sri Lanka, is coming down there and just spending so much time with her. And I was also lucky enough at that point too, where my grandma, she usually take me everywhere. She would take me to Pansal. Because of her, I think I have traveled everywhere in Sri Lanka except Sigiri, which I pass all the time but never get a chance to visit. But for sure, when I come next time, that's the first thing I'm gonna do. And then I think I'd be ready. I can say that I've been everywhere, but because of her, she's been a huge anchor for me to kind of explore Sri Lanka. And she made me eat spicy food. Now I can eat any spicy food here in New York because you can't beat Sri Lankan spicy food. That and also I was a very curious child growing up. So ever since she would take me to places, I always questioned her, oh, what's this, what's that? For example, when we go to Pansal and if I see temple paintings, they all tell a story, and I would And I love listening to stories, and like storytelling is, I'm a great listener when it comes to that. And she would tell me everything, and gradually every year that I come, every time when I visit to Sri Lanka, I see something different, so it's not always the same thing. So I really, the connection with Sri Lanka is, I feel like Sri Lanka is more of my home than it is here in New York. Oh my God, my friend would kill me if I said that, but but when I'm in Sri Lanka, I feel like I'm home. It's like just I can't even explain it in words. I get really emotional when I talk about Sri Lanka, because um, like, I think because every like the 2 months that I spend in Sri Lanka during the summertime, it's like a whole year for me here. Because like my lifestyle here in New York is very, very different than the 2 months that I spend in Sri Lanka. Because like here, everyone thinks like New York is like this awesome place and stuff. But like there's a day-to-day thing that we do. Like we wake up in the morning, we go to work, and then you come home like 11 at night. Because my lifestyle growing up here in New York, my parents opened up the first Sri Lankan restaurant here, and ever since, I was literally born into the business, where like I would wake up 8 in the morning. Usually I wake up 8 in the morning. My parents wake up way before that. I would wake up 8 in the morning. We'll get to the restaurant, and I'll stay there all day. I'll do my homework. I'll do like literally everything. The only time I would leave the restaurant if it's just for school or for dance class, and that was it. So I actually saw my parents do their day-to-day job. And so the only time where I actually do something really fun, I mean, staying at the restaurant is really fun because I get to meet different people, but you can't compare the fun with Sri Lanka. So I would actually wait for June and July to come so I can just like hop on a plane and just come to Sri Lanka. So yeah, Sri Lanka is a big part of my life. So
Really amazing to hear. And also, being born and raised in New York, I'm sure that you have this aggregate of cultures around you, especially in high school and university. So for you, being Julia, being from Sri Lanka, how important was it for you to culturally identify yourself as a Sri Lankan, and how was the experience like?
um, so I went to a Catholic school and growing up, and I was the only Buddhist student. And I kind of got the spotlight during school because actually not a lot of people, not a lot of my classmates or friends actually knew where Sri Lanka was. Because I had, ever since I was very little, I had a very long black hair, and they thought, oh, are you Indian? And when I was very little, I was quite stubborn. I'm like, I get so offended. I'm like, no, I'm from Sri Lanka. And ever since like having those experiences and moments with my friends, every school projects that I had in school, I tried to figure out a way to incorporate Sri Lanka in it. I don't think I had any project without me mentioning at least one thing about Sri Lanka. And that's kind of where I also got to, be, because I was a very shy person as well growing up, but that was like a place where if someone questioned me about where I was from, or like if they called me Indian, I would kind of get this huge confidence where out of the blue and be like, no, I'm from Sri Lanka, and this is where it's exactly from the map. And I'll tell the whole geography, and I'll tell how pretty it is and how unique it was and how it's such a paradise. And I would go on, and my friends like, okay, I think we got the point. I think we know where Sri Lanka is now. Even like when my friends come over, like, they all eat with their hands. Like we have like the Saturday Sunday buffet, so we have like all different types of curry, the rice and curry and stuff, and they'll all eat with their hands because they saw me eating with my hands, and I kind of like forced them, like, you gotta try it, it's so fun, and now they love it. They forget about the utensils and stuff. They just starts eating with their hand. It's insane.
It's insanely good. That's what it is. And
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
yeah, so yeah, it's amazing that you guys are in the whole in the restaurant business. You guys are tapping into that industry initially. So what made you really sit down and be like, I'm really going to open the world's first Sri Lankan museum outside of Sri Lanka? What really inspired you or pushed you into it?
Well, my dad, if you personally come to the restaurant, like my dad, like, yeah, we serve the Sri Lankan food, but the interior itself, you feel like you're in Sri Lanka. My dad is a designer. So I've always grown up looking at him, mostly the stuff would be like statues from different religion, like Hinduism, Buddhism. We have like a lot of Buddha statues. So I've always, and Vesmunu, and I've always been like surrounded by about like around that. And even at home, it literally, like, it's like a lot of people would say it looks like a museum because my dad would have all these type of stuff, and they all like is connected to Sri Lanka. So it's not like random stuff. It's like everything has a meaning, and I've been like surrounded by that my whole life, where like I don't know, when I was 15 actually when I mentioned to my dad, like, can we open up a museum? And the reason why, even at 15, it's rare where a kid knows about the in and out of a museum, right? You just go to, like, at that age, you just go to museum, you see these different stuff, but you don't really kind of get the gist of it, right? We're too young to understand.
Yeah.
But for me, when I go on school trips and my dad, bring all these type of stuff every week, it's still the same. Every Monday's our day off, and he will go out to these different antique shops and try to find something that's related to yeah, he still does it. Like, every Monday there's something new. We literally have a storage house just to because we don't have any
That's what I
room.
found.
Yeah, it's literally, he has like a storage place where he like stuffs all these stuff because he doesn't have any room at the restaurant. Because he's been filling it, but he changed it up in and out like once in a while. But it's insane and it's crazy. Like, a lot of the customers, they come like, "Oh, Ruan, it's like you never had that before." Like, people would notice the difference, which is it's nice for him. Like, he gets more confident at it, like more motivation out of that. Like, oh, they know the difference. Let me keep changing, and then they keep coming back. So it's something like that. But when it comes to the museum, I asked my dad when I was 15, can we open up a museum? So like, I was kind of like getting tired of like, speaking about it. And I was like, let's just show it. Like, let's just bring the stuff from Sri Lanka and just show it and see, like, and then it would be much easier for me to explain. Cause like sometimes, like, at that age, it was also hard for me to explain Sri Lanka because I'm myself learning about my own culture at the time. But like, I would, figure out somewhat ways to kind of explain it. And I didn't have an iPhone to go on Google Image and show like what I'm explaining. So like, it was just more of like, verbally, and like, if I was able to show it like in person, it would be a different vibe. That's kind of how I kind of got the idea, because I didn't go to school for it. Curating a museum is like a big process because I didn't have, when you go to a museum, there's so many different directors and different positions who take care of a museum. This one is just me, my mom, and my dad. And I brought up the idea, and like, luckily, my dad like kind of hopped in like so easily because he was artistic. So for him, it was so easy for him to say yes. But my mom took a little bit of time because she was like, she also, she's a cook, and my mom and my dad were actually partners when they first started the restaurant, so they're actually partners. And for her, it was like, growing up, she's like, you need to learn, do your studies very well and then get a job. But she never had the vision of an entrepreneur vision where like taking the risk and challenges. Like, she had my dad to kind of support her, but she was kind of worried that who would support me. And I was very young, and she kind of like judged upon that, like, oh, you're just dreaming. I thought, you do you want like a Barbie or something, like, but that was not what I wanted. But I was kind of lucky enough that my dad was like, he right away thought it was a good idea as well. And because of his artistic side of him, he was like, let's do it. But my mom, it took quite a while to convince her. But now she loves it, because now that she knew it's the World First Sri Lankan Art and Culture Museum, and she's the one that spends times with me at the museum. So when I do the tours, she's like sitting in the booth, like watching me doing my thing. And it was really, the process was quite tough because it was a 3-year project where we had to collect the stuff. And while doing the project with my dad, like, I was actually learning about it while doing it on the process, like, because like, I would just like, my vision of Sri Lanka was how the uniqueness of the people and how pretty it was, and how there's like the different types of food. But I didn't really go in depth at that age where like there's this 5,000 years of history that we need to present, right? So basically, if you enter my museum, it's literally how I visioned it. It's like, it's, I can't promise you it covers the 5,000 years of history, but it does cover my vision, how a New York girl who is from a Sri Lankan family vision her parents' country, basically. And that's how my museum is curated. And honestly, I don't think you need to go to school for that, because if you believe in yourself, and if you believe in what you see, and if you show that to your, to the, now I do present the museum to people who come from different states. We do thesis papers. I'm surprised, like, now, because like here in, in the States, I'm pretty sure you also know, there's not any classes for Sri Lankan history in any of the colleges. And now that I'm so excited that like we've been getting a lot of college students coming in and doing a thesis paper on Sri Lanka, that is like I think I have accomplished the biggest achievement ever, just having giving the attention from other students to come down to the museum and just be like, oh, can I like stay here? And people would actually would stay at the museum, and because they just said that like to write a thesis paper they would like to be surrounded by, like, there's different types of writers, right? They want to feel like they're there. And like I would have, like, I'm not even giving a tour for them, they just come and sit down at the museum and they just like, jotting their notes down. If they have a question, they'll ask me. And sometimes if I can't answer a question, I make sure that I jot down their email or phone number. I said, I don't know how to answer that question, but I'll ask my dad. And because it's like more of a learning experience for me at the museum. Like sometimes there's a question I don't know, like I don't even think of knowing that I should know that part of that knowledge. Like I would jot their email down and be like, I'll get back to you with the right answer. And that also helps my knowledge, because now I know something extra, and I get to help that dude. Hey, this is what it is.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Because I want, like, my goal is, when I feel like I have a huge responsibility when I give a tour at my museum, I have to make sure they know where Sri Lanka is, of course, right? And then the second thing is that their tour, they know somewhat Sri Lanka is, and also make people go to Sri Lanka and visit it. So then tourism in Sri Lanka is amazing.
Of
And that's
course.
literally my goal. So like, not just the fact of showing the museum, but also them taking something back and actually think like, oh, we should visit Sri Lanka too. It seems so nice, right? And at the restaurant itself, we have a TV where we put the tourism video in Sri Lanka, and it goes on repeat. And people would eat and keep watching that, and then they're like, the food is great, and now we should go. And that makes people visit. Even for me personally, like if I go to, like, my favorite type of food is Thai food, and I always keep telling my dad, can we go to Thailand one day, please? Like I really want to go. And like it really benefit me, because like not just having the museum, I also have my dad's restaurant where people can taste the food, and then they come to the museum and they visit. They kind of feel like they're gonna visit Sri Lanka itself entirely by learning the history, where it is. So it's like an all-rounded thing. So like I think me and my dad are great partners now. We're doing
And
it.
you're supporting academically through your services. It's just you're giving like a simulation of, you're giving a taste of what Sri Lanka is, the paradise
Yeah.
aspect of it. So it's really nice to see you doing that. And also, what kind of, do you have any special milestones that you have achieved through the course of actually developing this amazing concept and actually materializing it?
So for the past 3 years, I think the first milestone achievement that I've made is opening up the first Sri Lankan museum outside of Sri Lanka, which was a huge thing, and becoming the youngest museum owner. So I was very, very excited, because when I first started it, I didn't know that I was, because, when we compare it to the whole world, like that's a lot of people. But once like a lot of writers started come in trying to interview me, and they pinpointed out like, you're the youngest museum owner, right? And I'm like, am I? Because I was just 18 when I opened it. And then they pinpointed me again. They're like, there's only one statue at Metropolitan Museum, a bodhisattva that signifies Sri Lanka, and that's it around the world. And I was like, oh, is that? And then I didn't even do the research if where was I like in that point, right? And another milestone I think is that I was the first Sri Lankan girl, I mean youngest girl, to be on New Yorker magazine, which happened very surprisingly, and that actually helped me a lot to kind of get an international spotlight from that, because I was in Sri Lanka at the time when it was released. And when I was interviewed, I was a senior in high school, because I remember this because Ian Fraser, which is the writer, he came on a Wednesday, because I remember this because we have cameras downstairs in the base, because I started off my museum at my dad's basement. And I remember it because I usually don't like showing my museum when it's not like ready, the candles are not lit. Like I wanted to give like every person that comes down to the museum like the full experience, because I usually open on like Friday, Saturday, and Sundays only at those days. And I was just right after school. I came in my school uniform. I had like my senior sweater. He actually wrote about my senior sweater in the article, which is insane, because that's how it figured me. Like, oh my god, this was the
You
guy
remember
that
every
came.
detail.
Yeah, because he wrote every detail, and I'm like, oh, wow. And he said he was eating a lump rice, and he's like, can I visit like the museum? And actually, the restaurant wasn't busy; it was just him only. And I was like, well, we're only open on the weekends, and like, because usually after school I come to the restaurant to eat lunch. And he was like, please, I came really far. He didn't even mention he was from the New Yorker magazine, nothing. Because if he didn't mention it, I'm like, I wouldn't say no. So, and I think that's why like the article became like people still comes with like people would like rip the article out of the magazine and they'll bring it, and I'm like, how did you find out about my museum? And they'll just show me the article. I'm like, that is insane how that article that was released in 2017 and it still is in effect. Like, they still, people still bring it in, and they're like, we kept this article so like one day when we come to Senai, we definitely have to visit the museum. And I'm like, that is so touching. Like, so yeah, because of that article is where a lot of people, even Sri Lanka, found out about my museum, was through that. Because still to this day, I haven't done any advertising for my museum. It was just through that article that kind of like went viral, which was very exciting.
I think it's super impactful, and I hope that more and more non-Sri Lankans will like visit it, and also Sri Lankans traveling to New York will also pay a visit as well. And I would also like to know, with your experience, and you achieved a lot for your age. You're still a senior in college. You're doing your own thing. People talk about it. They write about it. They do interviews about it.
Yeah, thank
So, so I would like to know, what kind of advice would you give to other aspiring youth who are very passionate about telling their cultural stories? I mean, it could be through entrepreneurship, it could be through creating art. Yourself, you're basically studying cinematography. You know how you're passionate about that as well. So through all these avenues, what kind of advice would you like to give to, maybe it's Sri Lankans, maybe it's another cultural entity? What advice would you like to give for those who want to creatively narrate their stories?
Um, First thing is one thing uh for me in the beginning when I first, as an example, the first when I first started my museum in the basement, I had this huge insecurity calling it a museum because I was starting to compare. That was like one of my first mistake growing up and becoming an entrepreneur, was that I started to compare myself with other museums and other directors and stuff like that. um but later, like the second month when I opened up my museum is when I understand, like, my uniqueness, how I began. I started off at my dad's restaurant, a Sri Lankan restaurant, and then in the basement has a Sri Lankan museum. That's insane. I was comparing how the size of my place was. My basement was only like a height of 6 feet. It's very, very small. And I started to call it a gallery rather than a museum. And I think that's like one of the mistakes that I've made. I'm like, I shouldn't be like that. I should be myself. And if I'm calling my place a museum, even if it's like this small, it is a museum. And it took me time because I was very young. I mean, I had my parents to look up to, but even for them, this was very new for them too, because they didn't have any backgrounds on curating museum either. They only knew about the restaurant business, and that was it. Um, by that time, they only had like a 25-year experience in the restaurant biz, and me, I was just a 15, like 17-year-old trying to figure out how to do tours. I didn't go to school for that either, but my tours, if you ask anyone who ever visited my museum, I was just like, one of the comments and feedback I always get when I finish a tour is that I was always being myself. Like, one of the things that I would do is, if I see a Sri Lankan person coming down in the museum and they start talking to me in English, but I know they're Sri Lankan, I start to speak in Sinhala. Because yeah, it's just like, if you're Sri Lankan, I'm Sri Lankan, let's speak Sinhala. Like, it's totally cool. And they actually get more comfortable with me because, like, even though Sinhala is my second language, I might pronounce some words very wrong, but hey, they enjoy it. They start laughing. And I don't take it as an offense. Like, I'm like, oh, I said it wrong. Oh, well, and then they'll teach me it. And I'm like, thank you for teaching me how to pronounce it. And I think one thing about an entrepreneur is that, and one of my experiences, like, one of the biggest thing I think I've accomplished was just being myself. And being myself throughout how helped me even today, me speaking with you, is just being myself. I suck at interviews, but
You're
but
great.
it's
Don't
just
worry
that
about
but when I just be myself, and I always tell this to my friends too, like, being yourself is just that's like a huge unique part about yourself. If you try to be someone else, what's the point? Like, what's the point of your life? It's good to look up to people, but bring it, like, try to find a way to change it, be different. I think that's like one of the one of the things my dad taught me was like, don't do what someone else already did, do something that's different, and then yeah, there's going to be risk and challenges. And if a true entrepreneur, I think, is like when they see a vision or an idea, I think you just got to do it. Yeah, there's going to be risk and challenges. That's what life is like, right? You're going to face all these obstacles, but face it, because nothing comes easy. That's one thing that I faced was like, you don't, if you start something that's so different, don't expect it to be the next day is going to be great. Obviously you're going to face like these bad challenges and bad obstacles, but you learn from those things and then you change, and then you will see this success, right? Success doesn't come like 1, 2, 3, or it doesn't come like in 2, 3 months. It takes years and time. Sometimes there's people who are very lucky, they would succeed in like, I don't know, in a month or two. But everybody's fate is very different. So I think one thing is I want, and nowadays, especially during COVID pandemic, a lot of people are losing a lot of faith in them, in themselves. They're fearing about what's going to happen in the future. I feel like fear and you need to have a little bit of fear so you can motivate yourself to do something. Sometimes for me, like when it comes to school when I was very little, I was such a last minute person. Like I would just wait for the last moment to do an essay, but somehow my essays comes way better when it's last minute. But to me, just to me, I don't know if yeah, just to me. But sometimes you need a little bit of fear to kind of like motivate yourself to like, okay, I need to get my things up together. And that's something I think I could share with everybody else, is just to be yourself. And that's it. I don't think you have to be someone else to be who you want to be. Because like one thing about growing up, like especially in the Sri Lankan families personally, my mom especially would say when I was growing up, you have to be a doctor, engineer, something. You have to do that. Yeah, I'm like, okay, but and I was like, growing up, like I think when we were kids, we wanted to be many things, right? Not just being a
course.
teacher. We want to be many things, and I had that. I want to be a dance teacher. I want to do this and that, but I never thought I'll end up being a museum curator. I never knew that. I didn't even come across my head. I don't think I even knew that if that was even a thing growing up. So you never know who you're gonna be, but it's your commitment and your hard work would pay off. And I think I think the only thing, I think I'm just dragging this out, but just being yourself. That's just
Definitely.
being yourself and believe that there's a lot of possibilities. Everything is possible. It's just that you just have to put the input of hard work and time, and then anything is possible.
Definitely.
Don't sit and wait things to come to you. You have to go after it, even like when you go for a job, you start from one position and then you get promotion, right? That's how exactly an entrepreneur should do while working. Like you start an idea, but that doesn't mean you should promote yourself, kind of thing, right? You have to, don't stay in one place. Take time, especially don't rush into things. Sometimes people would, even for me, like I would rush into things and then it doesn't come out really good because I didn't give it time. And don't compare yourself. That's also another thing. Never compare yourself to others. Look up to them. Look how their lifestyle was like. But, then find something that's different with you. You have to do something different, because if you do something the same thing someone else did, I don't think it would succeed as much, because someone already succeeded in that. So trying to find a different route in the same position, but a different route that makes yourself unique. And I think the easy way doing that is just being yourself.
Well, thank you so much. And I think when we iron out what's internal, we can actually shine more than ever. So I think maintaining that authenticity is very important. So thank you so much, Julia, for your time and for engaging with us. And we wish you all the very best.
You.